I've always been a night owl. There's something comforting about empty roads, dimly lit by orange streetlights, the hum of tires on asphalt drowning out every other thought. But after what happened last month, I don't think I'll ever enjoy late-night drives again. It was a little after midnight when I left my friend's place. They live about an hour away from me, out in a rural part of the state. The kind of place where houses sit miles apart and the roads stretch endlessly through dark forests. I've made that drive home countless times, and usually it's peaceful. That night, though, something felt off from the moment I turned onto the main highway. The first thing I noticed was how empty it was. Not unusual for that time, but still the silence was heavy. No cars behind me. None coming from the other direction. Just my headlights cutting through the darkness and mile after mile of nothing. About 15 minutes in, I saw a pair of headlights appear in my rearview mirror. They were far back at first, just a faint glow, but I remember feeling oddly relieved. I don't know why, but it's like having another car out there made me feel less exposed. But the relief didn't last long. The car behind me closed the gap surprisingly fast. I figured they were just speeding and would pass me any second, but they didn't. They slowed down right as they reached me, matching my speed exactly. I tried not to think much of it. People do that sometimes, right? Maybe they were on cruise control, but the longer it went on, the more wrong it felt. Every little adjustment I made, speeding up, slowing down, they copied perfectly. After a few minutes of this, I got that feeling. You know the one. When the hair on your arms stands up and your stomach feels like it's dropping. Something wasn't right. I thought maybe I was overreacting, so I did something subtle. I flicked on my right blinker like I was about to pull over. Instantly, the car behind me swerved slightly in its lane like the driver had tensed up. That was all I needed to confirm it. They were watching me. At that point, I was gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I didn't know what to do. There weren't any gas stations or exits for miles, just endless blacktop and trees on either side. Then they did something that made my blood run cold. They turned off their headlights. 1 second, there was that bright glare in my mirror, and the next, darkness. I almost slammed on the brakes out of shock. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I kept glancing in the mirror, but there was nothing there, just the faint glow of my own taillights in the void. I told myself they must have turned around, or maybe they pulled over. But deep down, I knew better. A minute later, I saw them again. No headlights, but I could make out the silhouette of their car in the moonlight. They were right behind me, tailgating me, practically glued to my bumper. I panicked. I floored it. My little sedan isn't exactly built for speed, but I pushed it as hard as I could. The car stayed right behind me. No lights, no sound, except for the roar of engines and the pounding of my heartbeat. I kept looking for an exit, any place to get off. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw a sign for a rest area up ahead. I didn't think. I just swerved into the lane and pulled in, tires screeching as I came to a stop. There were a few dim lights and some vending machines, but no other cars. Just me and them. The car rolled in slowly after me. Still no headlights. They parked about 20 feet away and just sat there. No one got out. I couldn't even see inside. The windows were completely black. I sat there for what felt like forever, gripping the steering wheel, trying to decide what to do. I considered getting out, but something told me not to. Then, just as suddenly as they'd pulled in, the car reversed, slowly. Then it turned and drove back toward the highway. I didn't move. Not until their taillights disappeared completely. I should have felt relieved, but instead, I felt something worse. Because as I sat there trying to calm down, I noticed something on my windshield. It was a handprint, a perfect, clear handprint on the outside of the glass. And the thing is, I hadn't stopped since I left my friend's house. I just stared at it for a while, frozen. That handprint shouldn't have been there. I hadn't stopped, hadn't rolled down the windows, nothing. It was fresh too, clear, like someone had pressed their hand against the glass not long ago. My first thought was that I was losing my mind, that I was imagining things because I was freaked out. But when I reached out and touched it, I felt the smudge, the oily residue from someone's skin. I yanked my hand back like it burned me. My entire body was shaking now. That's when I noticed something else. The handprint wasn't normal. The fingers were too long, way too long, and the palm was narrow, almost unnatural. I wanted to throw up. I kept telling myself to leave. Just get back on the road, get home, and forget this ever happened. But every time I glanced up at that empty stretch of highway, my stomach churned. Because what if they were waiting out there? What if the second I pulled back onto that road, those headlights, or worse, no headlights, showed up behind me again? So I sat there, gripping the wheel, staring at that weird handprint, trying to come up with a plan. That's when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the back of my car, 3 slow taps on the trunk. My chest seized up. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Tap, tap, tap. Again, louder this time. I slammed my car into reverse without thinking, tires squealing as I shot backward. Nothing was there. The entire rest area was empty, just pale light spilling from those dim lamps. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely shift back into drive. I took one last look around, saw nothing, and floored it out of there. The highway felt different now, bigger somehow, darker. Every shadow stretched across the road like fingers trying to grab me. I kept checking my mirrors, scanning the trees, but I didn't see any headlights, no car, nothing. I should have felt relieved. But the longer I drove, the worse the feeling got. Like something was sitting in the back seat, just out of sight. I didn't dare look. I drove like that for another 20 minutes, gripping the wheel so tight it hurt, until I saw the exit for my town. I nearly cried from relief. Just a few more miles and I'd be home. But right as I took that exit, my radio turned on, by itself. The volume was low at first, just static. Then slowly a voice came through, a whisper. You shouldn't have stopped. I almost swerved off the road. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I was going to pass out. The voice repeated it, louder this time, clearer. You shouldn't have stopped. I reached for the power button, but before I could touch it, the sound cut out. Dead silence. I pulled into my driveway, shaking so hard I could barely get the key out of the ignition. I bolted inside, locked every door, every window, and sat in the living room with all the lights on, trying to convince myself it was over. And for a while, I believed it was. Until last night. I was getting ready for bed when I glanced at my bedroom window. There was a handprint on the glass, the same one.